Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the What the Finance podcast, where we talk to investing and finance experts to learn about all things investing and trading. So on today's podcast, I'm happy to be hosting Amit Kukreja, founder of Audio. Is it Audio or how do you say it? Audio, sorry. there's always a way to say it, isn't it? Audio.io, and also a massive fan of Palantir and other investing, and a content creator on YouTube as well. So Amit, thanks for joining the podcast. And just onto my first question, sort of how did you get into this crazy world of investing and finance?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I've been a stock market junkie for about 2 years now. Really, in 2019 is when I started first buying stocks because of Robinhood. I think Robinhood kind of really made it easy for a lot of people to get into it. And I did, a horrible job buying and selling. 2020 was the biggest bull run really of the past, like 40, 50 years. And I made $0. And like literally I lost money because I didn't know how to invest. If you bought anything, you would make money because everything was going up and I still wasn't able to make money. Right. So it was just, I think those years were pivotal for me to just understand the nature of investing, especially in a bull market. If you can't make money, you're obviously doing something wrong. So now in an obvious bear market, I'm starting to really understand what it means to have conviction, what it means to hold, what it means to sell puts, and like all these like technical things. And I've just been a stock market junkie for a long time. So in November 2021, I started the YouTube channel just to kind of put my thoughts out there around Palantir. First video I put out, I thought, I might get some clicks. I thought I might do well, and it started to get a little momentum. So I was like, let me do another video and another video. And then I just decided that this is something that people would like to hear from me particularly because of how I communicate and because of my analysis. One of the things I pride myself on YouTube and content creation in general is not overhyping and sensationalizing a lot of the content, like Palantir to $500. Like you're going to get clicks on that, but the authentic relationship you're going to create with your community is going to be damaged because, they're just clicking because of a number in the title. So yeah, I've been a stock market junkie for a long time and now creating content around investing.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, there's so many people like that, aren't there? Just as you said, they just hype it out like crazy, but there's just no authenticity in it. They're basically just trying to, it's so obvious, they're trying to just get more views and subscribers.
Yeah, and getting views and subscribers is important, but how you do it matters. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying there's never a little bit of fun stuff in the title, but you want to get people to click. You don't want to get people to click and feel so upset that for why they even clicked in the first place. And I think it's balancing that line that allows you to start developing a relationship with an audience that continuously clicks over time.
Yeah, that's super important. So when you look back, sort of when you first started, you said, bull market, didn't make any money. What were the mistakes you think you made during that time?
Well, the first one was selling Tesla.
I'm sure a lot of people have made that.
Yeah, I had Tesla at 190 in May 2019. And I was talking to my friend who's a couple years older than me when it got to 350 pre-split. And he's like, yo, sell it. Take that 150 profit. And I don't know why I listened to him. This is when I started realizing that you should stop listening to me. Because the reason I invested in Tesla was because I thought it was cheap, but I knew nothing about the growth story, the potential, the emerging S curves, Cathie Wood's thesis. I was just like, oh, it's a cool car company. So when I saw $150 profit, I was like, that's $150. That's awesome. And I think, young investors, they think $150 means something, but when you get that $150, what are you giving up? And why did you even invest in the first place? And if you can't answer those questions, then it's not going to be a meaningful investment in the first place. So I sold it and then it ran up again. Then I bought it. Then I sold it for a loss. And then it ran up again. I sold it, bought it for a loss. And that's mainly panic selling. And obviously Tesla is very volatile. So of course you're going to panic sell. So if you don't have real true conviction and a thesis, then it's hard to buy into a stock, which is why I'm also bullish on YouTube and stock investing content, because as annoying as it gets sometimes with the clickbait stuff, at least it creates a community, right? So if you're invested in Palantir and $20 is your average, and you're finding videos from people like me or some other people that are like actually explaining, I think that have a decent knowledge of what's going on in the macro level economy, you can feel a little bit more comfortable with the thesis and not immediately panic sell. And I wish I had watched those videos of Tesla investors, desperately wish I watched those videos December 2019. So that was one mistake. Another stock I had was NIO, electric car company. I had it at like $3. Literally, NIO was one of the first stocks I bought on Robinhood because it was a penny stock. And I was like, $3. This is crazy for an electric car company. And I had like hundreds, I think I had like 400 or 500 shares. And I sold it at $6 and NIO ran to $65. So I could have made like 40,000 there, right out of college. Literally, I would have had a real-time salary in like not even 5 months, 4 months. It would have been insane. And it never happened, so that's the part that sucks.
Yeah, I think everyone has a story. Like I was the same. I had I think it was like half a Bitcoin at like 3,000 when it was $3,000 and had to sell out for other reasons. So I think everyone has that story where it's like, shit, I made that mistake. But as you said, it's not, not going in on other stocks and making losses because of that.
Absolutely sucks. Yeah. It was not fun. Not fun at all.
Definitely. So, if anyone's watching any of your videos, and you mentioned it there, you're pretty bullish on Palantir, and a lot of your content is sort of based around Palantir. So maybe can you explain your analysis of the company? And, I guess you mentioned it there. It's like you're really looking to invest in the long term. So why do you think it's good for the long term?
Yeah, so I mean, the bull case on Palantir in short is that companies are producing data at massive amounts of scale, and that data is going to need to be made sense of in order for them to operationalize their businesses. So if you think about, let's say a basic car manufacturer, there's a lot of moving parts to how that car manufacturer operates their business. There's supply chains and logistics. That's a big deal. There's marketing, there's finance, there's sales, there's recruitment. There's actual technology that goes into the cars. A lot of cars are getting a lot more powerful in terms of AI and autonomous driving. So there's a variety of mechanisms, and you can take that example of the car example for a variety of other companies that all have different parts of their company that have to create massive amounts of data in order for that company to make sense. And the problem in the problem in the industry is that data is disparate, it is siloed, it is not all centralized in one place in order for it to be made sense of. So Palantir is an operating system for the enterprise in which it takes all of this data from supply chain, marketing, finance, blah, 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 puts it in one place, and then on top of that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning at the edge to be able to operationalize how that data should be scaled and utilized to drive better decisions. So if you are a car manufacturer and there is a inventory delay coming from Japan, because that's where you get like the door handles for your cars, because there's like a hurricane in Japan, then you need to be able to make a decision immediately, or even better, before that happens, because there's this predictive analytical software that can predict some things that are happening, or at least predict some things that have a potential to happen, to be able to optimize your business in case that stuff happens, to save on your bottom line. And Palantir has created a technology that is able to integrate with any type of business to be able to make sense of their data and help them understand what to do with that data at scale. And the thesis is, if you believe that data is going to be created at massive amounts of scale, and that data has to be understood in a meaningful way for the business to actually operate in the digital age, just like if you weren't on the internet in 2010, your business likely isn't around in 2022. If that's the same thesis with data, then there has to be a technology that makes sense of it. And that's Palantir.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the customers they're targeting are those massive companies you said, I think BP, and a few of those companies as well. So it's like trying to bring the legacy systems with those silos, trying to bring them to basically, the current world and prepare them for the future when there's crazy amounts of data.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's like, when we think of data, it's like, what is data? Data is just like random pieces of information that are irrelevant. Like our data on YouTube is irrelevant if it's not part of YouTube. Right? Like if I click on a video, it doesn't matter unless YouTube can say, oh, Amit clicked on this video. Maybe this video is another good video for Amit to watch. That's a data problem. And if YouTube's able to create a massive recommendation engine, they're able to get massive amounts of scale. So you think about companies that exist throughout the entire world. We're talking about biopharmaceuticals, drug discovery companies, supply chain companies, climate change companies that are going to have to solve these existential crises that humanity faces. These are data problems. These are not problems. There's a lot of problems associated with them, but first and foremost, they need to know what to do, how to do it, and how to make sense of the stuff that they get from the things that they're doing, i.e. the data they start generating. And that's where Palantir is playing a role in. And if it's able to do that for the commercial sector, then there's, I just think, a massive multi-trillion-dollar market opportunity for them to attack.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, if they, if these companies do well from using Palantir, they're actually going to be, Palantir is going to be making more money themselves just from those clients as well as from other clients as well. They get attracted to it. So it's just, the better that the product is for these customers, the better it is for Palantir.
Yeah, I mean, there's a massive network effect. When clients are getting more value out of Palantir, they're going to stick. Palantir is a sticky business model, right? It's like people don't get rid of AWS because all of your cloud computing is done on AWS. So if you're not going to get rid of AWS because it's integrated into the fabric of your business, Palantir is the intelligence side of AWS, meaning it makes sense of your data. It's not just there to host your data in a cloud. And if you need to make sense of your data over the next 10 years, and this is a product that not a lot of companies are adopting because they don't know that they have to make sense of their data, just like they were still using physical servers in 2006 when AWS was starting. And now we know what AWS has become. So if Palantir can even become a slice of that, then that would be pretty big.
Do you think they'll have trouble scaling? Because I guess the issue is that like all these companies are so unique, they almost have to tailor make solutions for them. So do you think that may be an issue, or do you think they'll be able to find a solution for that?
Yeah, well, I think that they've been working for so long in this space that they've been able to figure out how to come up with tailor-made solutions in a more reticent manner. So their earnings just came out yesterday, and Palantir was able to grow 41% year over year. They were able to add 200 more commercial clients. So to me, what it's showing is like a client goes up to them. It takes a little bit of negotiation in terms to figure out what needs to be done, and then the product is integrated. Now, the product is not integrated in a way that operationalizes their business for the data analytics millennium tomorrow, but it at least gets them up and running and starts to get them to do what they need to do. I believe the Palantir product will become a lot more slimmer and thinner over time. I don't think it's going to be this like massive $10 million contract that someone has to agree to. I think it's going to be like a $500,000 contract people agree to, and they'll be able to sign up immediately. But that comes with the business actually being able to figure out how to, as the CEO says, modularize parts of the business in order to fit for like any type of customer. But yeah, as of now, it does take a little bit of integration to actually get them to scale.
Yeah, so you can see them almost like if you look at Shopify, they, if you're a smaller company, you don't have to pay anything until you sort of scale to a certain point. So you can see something similar to that being with Palantir.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people will be able to sign up, have like a 2-week trial, or have like a 5 gigabyte level of data trial. Once you fill up 5 gigabytes of data, then like they charge you, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy the thing. So we were talking just before the call how Palantir has gone down quite a bit the past few months. So I think just this year it's gone down sort of 20%. Do you think that's more just based on market trends, what's happening, with the Fed, with, geopolitical risks, all that stuff, or what's your opinion?
Yeah, it is absolutely. It has nothing to do. I think the stock price is just like it is detached from reality of the company. I mean, I've done a lot of videos on my channel just covering what the company has done, and every day there's new deals, new partnerships, new things, new products that they're unveiling with the SPAC investments that they've been able to make. Like, there's just so much going on. If this was 2020, the level of FOMO that would exist in terms of being able to get into this company before it becomes the next big thing would be at an all-time high. But that's not what the macroeconomy is saying right now, right? The macroeconomy is saying, for good reason, there's inflation. As a result, interest rates hikes are going to come. When interest rate hikes come, growth stocks that are growing and don't have profit get hammered in terms of valuations because the cost of borrowing capital costs more because interest rates are higher. And historically, in the 1940s, we saw this happen. In the 1970s, we saw this happen. And in those 2 years, value stocks outpaced growth stocks at an average level of 10%, given those 2 decades, not years, decades, had high levels of inflation. So are we going to be in that decade for 2020 going into 2030? I don't think so. I think this will get a lot better, but at least for the next 4 or 5 months, it's going to be a little bit rough given what's going on in the macro.
Yeah, definitely. I remember talking to someone like a few weeks ago when they were saying that, Q3 2022 is really where we might see that inversion where a lot of the risks we're seeing at the moment, they may hopefully have calmed down a little bit, and then people might actually be able to focus more on, as you said, the growth of the company in the future and what we can see.
Yeah, exactly. I think I think Palantir will not be at $10 forever. I think all the Twitter trolls that are in the mentions are happy today. And, I just expect them to keep that same energy when Palantir is like at $300, but we'll see what happens over time.
Yeah, definitely. And how do you, because I know you sort of put a position in like a few months ago, how do you sort of keep the faith and don't get concerned about the, short-term, I guess, losses?
This is a very good question. So there's 2 things. Number one, I explained in the beginning of this podcast that I made this mistake already of panic selling. Like, I did this already. So I know what it feels like to be in this situation. So it's really so that's the first thing. So I've been through the experience. I have a little bit more maturity when it comes to like holding a stock that I have conviction in. Number 2 is like, what am I going to sell it for? Like, I'm down like almost 30 grand on Palantir right now. So what? I'm going to sell it to make up 30. How else do I expect to make up that 30? Where am I going to put my money to break even? Like, no, so it's just kind of ridiculous to me when you're down this much to just sell, especially when nothing is going up. It's not just Palantir. So that should make you have a little bit of comfort, because it's not like, oh my God, I should put it into NVIDIA because NVIDIA is running in Palantir. It's like when you're down and you have to deal with the fact that you're down, this lets you know if you're ready to be successful in life. Because I said this on a video that I just recorded today. No successful entrepreneur or business person or anyone, musician, actor, that has done anything remotely better than mediocre in life has done it without a level of uncertainty. And in fact, the level of uncertainty was probably so much higher than the level of certainty that it probably made their stomach turn at night. But they were able to somehow overcome it. It was like, why? It's like, because they knew the outcome of trying was better than the outcome of not trying. So to me, the outcome of Palantir eventually becoming the next Tesla of data, which I think it can become, given all the research I know about it, fundamentally outweighs me looking at my portfolio and feeling bad that I'm down 30,000.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a main thing, especially when you're young and you're investing. It's like, have that faith that, I think there's the classic, and this is an advice, but they say, if you have 6 months of, or, at least 3 months of living expenses in cash just to sort yourself out, then from there you can invest sort of potentially the rest of it. If you have that maybe more risk inclination into these stocks for full long term to sort of, as you said, potentially get the profits.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of your investment process, you said, you've mentioned a few stocks, mostly growth stocks. Is that mainly your main focus, growth stocks? And I guess, how do you analyze a company? Do you do your own research? Do you look at other, maybe people? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, so when I look at a company, I try to understand first what is the growth story, obviously, because I'm at an age where I don't think investing in like Coca-Cola or Kraft Heinz or Verizon to get like a 4% yield on the dividend, that doesn't excite me personally. Like I'm not in this market to do that. I'm in this market to get a 10x, 20x return. That's a very bold, audacious thing to say. So if you're going to do that, there's two things you need to do. Number one, a heavy amount of research, and I'll get into that in a second. And number two, a solidification process over diversification process. So I only have 3 stocks. I have ARC Innovation, and I don't have a lot of innovation. Palantir, obviously. And then I have a BioTech that I don't talk about. The reason I don't talk about the BioTech publicly on YouTube is because I don't want to be, it's down so much. I don't want it to be seen as if I'm pumping the bio stock. Because biotech stocks are very risky, but I've been in this biotech for almost 2 years now, and I am down the rabbit hole so hard that like I would sound like a madman trying to explain how much I know about the stock. So it's like, all right, I'm just not going to talk about that. But I think I have like a $25,000 position in that stock because I genuinely believe that's going to be like a 4x return in the next year or two. But I've done, but the amount of research, the same thing is for Palantir or the biotech. There's just so much research done into that stock that it gives me the comfort. So the research goes in a couple of levels. Number one, what is the story for the stock 10 years from now? And the question is the thing that they are offering going to be relevant? So something like a Google, if you were going to evaluate that as a stock, it's like, is search going to be relevant 10 years from now? I guess the answer is yes. But with data privacy coming up, it's like, do people really want to be tracked anymore? That's a question you have to think about. So for Google to 10x from now as a $2 trillion company to be worth $20 trillion, right? Kind of sounds a little crazy. Now with inflation, maybe 20 trillion is not that crazy. But if search is going to be what it was over the past decade, then Google, might be able to 20x at that point. So with a company like Palantir, I asked that first question, is data going to be relevant in the next 10 years? And our company is going to be producing data at scale? It's like, the answer is yes. It's like, all right, so that's the first question. Number two, is the solution that the product is offering going to be able to solve the problem that they're ultimately going to be able to solve? For Palantir, the question is, are they going to be able to make sense of all that data that's going to be produced in the next 10 years with their technology? The answer is yes. So it's like, all right, that's another answer. So those are the first two questions. Is the product going to be relevant in 10 years? And is the solution of the product going to actually be meaningful in 10 years? Because search may be relevant in 10 years, but maybe search is not that more meaningful anymore. I mean, in the metaverse, maybe you don't need search, right? There's all these different things to think about. And then the final question is the numbers. And, I go through the numbers. I try to understand what is the growth rate year over year. I try to understand what is on the balance sheet, and particularly, are they GAAP profitable? So one of the things I love about Palantir is they're a high growth tech stock. They're not GAAP profitable, but they're operationally profitable, meaning they're 30% operationally profitable. Operationally profitable means if you exclude various things like stock-based compensation, they are in the profit. So they're 30% profitable off of 1.5 billion in revenue. That's 500 million in profit they would have today. But they don't, because they're not GAAP profitable yet, because they have stock-based compensation. So to me, I'm like, well, it's on the path towards profitability as a high growth tech stock, and the story is so good that it's like, all right, this is a chance to invest. Last thing is leadership. And I'm starting to get really bullish on leadership as a Palantir shareholder, because I understand my leadership of this, the leadership of the company, and I feel confident about them. So for me to invest in something like a Roku, like I saw the CEO talk yesterday on CNBC, like, this guy's boring. Like, he's not, he's just like, yeah, the advertising business is very productive. I'm like, no, if you're going to talk about ads, which is one of the most boring businesses in the world, you have to make me really care about advertising. And he was just so bland as the stock price was dropping 20% after hours. I'm like, I'm not investing in this. I'm not excited for it.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen that, like, obviously Elon Musk is the classic, like, people love that leader who they want to love, and they can, maybe not relate to, but, they just find interesting. So I guess, if you look at Palantir, it's Alex Karp, is it? I think. So what are your thoughts on him? So you like him, obviously.
I love him. I mean, I think he dropped the F word on a public earnings call yesterday 2 times in a row. He literally said, our product is effing cool and people leave big tech to come work for our product because we're effing doing stuff. And for him to say that in front of a Morgan Stanley analyst, right? Like that stuff is only Elon level stuff. And now the thing about Karp that's really hard for people to understand is I think if he had a Twitter, he would be that Elon level type of figure. The problem is Palantir works with the government, and we can talk about that. And so because they work with the government, there is so much like scrutiny that would come upon a leader of a CEO that's working with the highest level of officials if he was saying something like Senator Karen. Like he can't say that stuff, right? He works like a lot of the money they get is from the government. So it's good he doesn't have a Twitter, but his personality is that bombastic Elon tweet memes level personality, but he only gets to showcase it in like public facings. This was one of the first earnings call he did live for shareholders, and he wasn't supposed to say some of the words that he said, but he said it because again, he just didn't care. And I want a CEO that has that level of adamance and firmness and confidence. Like at this, if you're in this company, you don't want a CEO to be held back wearing a shirt and tie and just like, talking about the growth potential of the business. You want someone saying this is effing cool. So maybe that's the nature of my personality, but I want that ferocious leader that just does not care.
Yeah, definitely. He obviously has a lot of belief in like what they're doing because, they've been going at it for 17, 18 years. He's still there. He was a co-founder, CEO. So he obviously believes in the mission and believes that they're sort of getting to that stage where they can make change.
Yeah, I mean, he believes in it, and if you believe in it, then if you're all in, then you're all in, right? And there's some things in life where you got to be all. I don't think especially like you and me, we're in our early 20s, right? Like I don't think this is the time to be half in, as Gary Vaynerchuk calls it, half pregnant, right? Like if you have an idea, it's like, damn it, go pursue that idea. And it's like, if that idea fails, it's like, all right, but at least you knew you gave everything to that idea. And I think Palantir is giving everything to this concept of becoming the world's most important software company. And the numbers back it up. It's not some hoorah. I mean, they're growing 40% year over year. That's the startup numbers. That's not big tech numbers. Amazon's lucky if they get 10, 15% year over year. So I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, and I guess you could say, they've only recently entered the actual corporate business. So I think it's 3 or 4 years. Before that, they were doing 100% government. So the fact that they're growing that, their government's, revenue is growing as well. It's good signs for what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm bullish. I'm drinking. Yeah.
You've shown that very well. So you mentioned the BioTech stock. I don't know would you be willing to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, I can say what it is. PPBT, ticker is Purple BioTech. The bull thesis is that they are going to get bought out by Bristol Myers Squibb. Again, I sound crazy saying this. They have a drug called NT219. And that drug last year, June 4th, in their PR, it reduced 100% of a esophagus tumor or a liver tumor in one of their patients that they were doing the trials on. They have a chemical drug a cancer drug that targets STAT3 and IRS2 pathways to tumors. And as a result of that, it's one of the most unique forms of those drugs. A lot of people have tried to do this. Purple BioTech's been doing it for the past 15 years. They were originally called Kitov Pharmaceuticals. So they're an Israeli biotech. And as a result of being called Kitov Pharmaceuticals, October 2020, they changed their name to Purple BioTech. And, sort of the thesis was like, why are they changing their name to Purple BioTech? Well, if you're going to get bought out by a public company, they're not buying a religious name of a company, right? No one, like that's just not how business works. Purple BioTech, purple represents oncology, which deals with cancer. It's the leading color for cancer. So they fundamentally changed their name. It's like, okay, you got to rebrand. Number two, they just opened up a Swiss subsidiary. If you know anything about Switzerland, money flows through Switzerland. So like that's one thing. And then one of the other things, and again, this is just going down the rabbit hole, they have a new chief business officer named Fabian. Fabian just left a $25 billion pharmaceutical company, $25 billion in revenue as one of their C-suite executives to be the chief business officer at a company that is trading 20% below net cash. You left a $25 billion company for a $65 million market cap company like that doesn't even have profits. Like it doesn't make any sense anymore until you start to connect the dots and you're like, wait a second, this is actually going to this drug is actually a candidate for multiple different suitors and trials. And again, it's going down the rabbit hole, but that's why I'm very deep into them, been deep in them for the past 2 years. I think they have theoretically a cure for cancer, so it's like, all right, $25,000 bet. If it works, then it'll work.
And how did you discover that?
It was crazy. I was on Instagram one day and someone tweeted or someone put it on their story, and literally I just put it on their story when the stock was like $1.30, and then I clicked on it, and I learned more about it, and then I started doing more research and I started buying a little bit, and then the stock price started dropping, so I started doing more research because when it drops you have to get more conviction, and you slowly start developing a thesis, and then I started solidifying a position, and 2 months later they did a reverse split. So my 18,000 shares became 1,800 shares. And I was just like, and so that's bad for most people, right? Like I lost like $6,000 in a day. That was my real introduction to the stock market. I still haven't made those $6,000 back yet. It just kept going down and down and down. So, at that moment, so I started asking, why did they do this reverse split? And then you really go deep into it. Like there's a strategic plan that they're trying to implement that they really can't talk about because that's how it is with drugs. And you start to look at companies that are similar to them. I mean, Trillium Therapeutics bottomed at like 81 cents before 5 months later being bought out for $18 a share. And that's an 18x return, right? So you really start doing research on why the company is being manipulated, what is exactly happening. ARK actually had about 700,000 shares of this company as well. ARK's Israeli fund. They've recently reduced that position to like 200,000 because the whole market's been selling off. But yeah, it was an Instagram post that got me into the company.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Like, you keep your mind open to all these ideas, then you do your own research. And that's what I've really found, that like, especially with YouTube videos or, some of this content, you just get these ideas and then from there, do your own research. And you're like, oh, that's a really good opportunity. Let me actually, potentially invest in it. That's what I found really works.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to make a decision. And I've not made a lot of good decisions. I just sold Facebook yesterday. We can talk about that if you want to buy more Palantir. So yeah, it is what it is. You gotta roll with the boat.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess you're learning, but I think it's just the market at the moment, isn't it? It's just, all these different things.
Market
stocks have
right?
gone up. So yeah, exactly. But that's why you look at it the long term.
Yeah, and that's my thing about being long term. It's like people are freaking out. I'm like, why? Like, if you're in this for a long time, it's just enjoy the ride, even if the ride is a little bumpy,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So is that you sold out of Meta or Facebook to get into Palantir? Is that just because you have more conviction on Palantir? And
yeah, I bought Facebook. My original, and I'm doing a video on this soon. My original thesis was like, I don't see advertisers going anywhere other than Facebook over the next 5 years. I'm like, where are they going to go? Facebook has 3 billion people, 10 million advertisers. Like, it is still the cheapest place to get a return on investment for your ad. Now I bought before earnings destroyed. So I was like, all right, for me to get $250 billion of market cap back to break even, I was like, it's not happening. There's just you have at one point you have to admit defeat. So the only way I solve this is if I buy the dip and I slash my average in half. And it's like, do I really want to allocate another $2,500 to Facebook? And then you start going into the bull thesis or the bear thesis, and you're like, the bear thesis is not necessarily bad. I mean, TikTok, this whole metaverse thing, maybe not actually panning out. The advertisers may be spending their money somewhere else, even though I don't think that's going to happen. But I don't think Wall Street cares that much more about advertising. They care about like overall usage and growth, and like to give them $250 billion of market cap based upon good ad numbers, I think it's going to be really hard. I think the company's in a very tough spot. And then it's just a question of like, do I see Facebook giving me a 10x return or Palantir giving me a 10x return? And I invested in Facebook to get large cap exposure, so to diversify a little bit from all this growth tech. And when Facebook flopped, I was like, why is my money even here? Like, if I'm going to be losing more money in the stock market, I'd rather be losing it in a stock that I care about versus a stock that I can't sleep well at night knowing that I own. And it wasn't a moral concern. I did not sell it because of unethical. I think those arguments are kind of idiotic. I sold it just purely for a financial reason.
Yeah, markets have been crazy. Like, you've seen Snapchat, down 40, 50%, up 60%. Same with Netflix, Meta. They're almost trading like, if you look at crypto, like shit coins, just like up and down, crazy volatility.
Imagine Palantir as a penny stock. Like, could you imagine a company growing 41% year over year, working with the highest levels of clearance in the government, trading at below $5? So
would you be all right if that happened?
Well, I would sell. I don't know what I would sell to start buying that at that level, because it's just like at one point it becomes ridiculous and you have to accept that. So it's ridiculous right now.
Yeah, definitely. But as you said, like, if we look at the past 14 years, stock market goes up, there'll be these short drops here and there. So I guess the only concern will be, do we go to sort of back to the value, beats growth, and how long will that last? I guess that's the major concern that people could have.
Yeah, I just don't think that's going to happen, because what is value providing? What value does value give? Like just take a company like Palantir. If data is going to exist at scale and companies need to make sense of it using artificial intelligence and machine learning, there's no, like, Verizon's not doing that, right? Like there's no value stocks that get, and a stock like Palantir can't be a traditional value stock because it needs to aggressively grow to scale that market, which means it's not going to have short-term profits. But the question is, like, will they grow? I think that's the question in order to determine if this value growth thing makes any sense. And it's like, well, if companies are going to need them because companies are going to need to innovate with their data, then they have to grow, right? Like if that's the thesis you believe in, they have to grow, which means I don't think the value thing makes any sense anymore. You know, we get five more green days in the market in a row, the whole narrative changes. And that's the other thing I've learned about the stock market. Like narratives change so quickly. CNBC will flip on Cathie Wood so quick. It's like, it's insane, but it's the media business. So I understand. But with the stock market, because there's money involved, everyone is so emotional. And you know, it's kind of the day of what the climate is at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a bit bipolar, isn't it? Just depending on what happens this day and that.
Yes.
Yeah, did you see that the Cathie Woods and the Zoom?
I did. That was quite hilarious. I did a reaction.
CNBC's. I think it was. Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned that in your video.
Yeah, it was CNBC. I did a reaction to the video that I'm posting soon. It was pretty hilarious. I think, you know, I the thing about her when she went on CNBC yesterday with Josh Brown, I felt that she was a little scared actually answering the questions. Not scared as in she doesn't know what the answer is, but she's repeating the same thing she's repeated for the past 8 months. And I think people are tired of it. And it's not her fault. That's her thesis, right? She's sticking to it, but they ask the same questions. Like, when is it like your fund is down 50%? Investors are like being screwed right now. How are you going to solve it? And she has to keep saying inflation is transitory. And it's like, now when she says it, she doesn't say it, in my opinion, at the level of confidence that she said it a couple months ago, naturally, because it's like, it's hard to be super confident when you're on live television telling everyone everything's going to be okay when everything's just not okay. It was easier to do it 4 months ago because you were thinking that the market was overreacting. Now it seems like the market has baked in the fact that this is going to be around for a while. But we will see if she's right. I don't know. She just sold 5 million shares of Palantir yesterday. And again, my thesis is just like, I don't know why you're selling it for Roku and Roblox. Like, Cathie Wood is infinitely smarter than me, but I believe in Palantir. And at the end of the day, I have to believe in myself and my own due diligence. So like, if you're going to sell it to buy Roku, then okay, go ahead. I don't agree. I'm not saying you're an idiot, but I'm not saying you're not smart, but I just personally don't agree. So it's confusing to be a Cathie fan because I'm also a Palantir fan. And it's like, I believe in growth, innovation, and disruption. I have to believe in that for Palantir, but I don't believe in her sells to buy the dip on Roku. So
yeah, and I think, but if you look at Palantir as well, it's focused on disruptive times and like bad times, like we're seeing now, like high inflation, like uncertainty. That's what the company is really based on. Like that's where they, you know, in the UK, they basically distributed PPE to all hospitals, you know, and I think they built that in like a few days. They built this system where they could distribute all this PPE throughout the country. So I think it's one of those things that, you know, if shit does happen, then they're probably going to benefit from it, Palantir. Whereas I guess, you know, advertisers and stuff might not.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the case. Well, like, yeah, it's like, that's the weird part. Cause it's like, if the world is going to get more complex, why is Roku like the thing that you want to start, you know, it's like, again, they have a lot of research on Roku. That's fine. I just think they should have more research on Palantir, but that's where I have to disagree with her sometimes. But overall, I think she's correct on her thesis. It's just a question of, is Roku going to be the major? I mean, one thing that's important to understand, I heard on CNBC yesterday, Roku, I think, was at a high of like $400 something. They asked her, is there ever a chance where these stocks that are down 80% go back to that high? And she said, yes, and they can go higher. And that's where I don't disagree with her, but I'm just like, do I think Roku's going to go back to $450 over the next 5 years? And if it does go back over the next 5 years, for the people who bought it at 380, like, you know, like, it's like, that's the tough part here, rather than if she admits defeat and is just like, all right, we screwed up on Roku, we're moving on. I don't think she has the wherewithal to do that because she believes in her thesis. So now let's see if she's right.
Yeah. If you look at some companies in, let's say, you know, tech bubble in 2000, like Intel haven't reached their high that they had in 2000. So like, there's the potential there. It's like, are these companies, have they hit their high and now they're just going to exist for the next 20 years, but not actually get back to that?
Yeah. And again, if she's correct, that shouldn't happen because they're growing. And like, and the tech, like when everything crashed in 2000 and started to rebound, it didn't make any sense because none of those companies really had technology. So like that's why it took so long for it to rebound. But like now this drop was like, all right, it dropped, but it didn't drop because these tech companies, like this stuff didn't drop because these are frauds. This stuff dropped because of inflation. And I think that's her argument. It's like, all right, pets.com like was so egregious that Amazon had to fall with it because it's like the whole sector was just full of crap. But it's like that's not happening right now. This whole sector is not full of crap. Now, some NFT projects, some cryptos are full of crap, but like these stocks are not full of crap. They have real numbers, real revenues. They're actually growing. Palantir 40%. Like that's not a fraud. So theoretically, they should be able to bounce back once this cycle changes. But that's what we're going to see over the next 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be a crazy time, I think. So, Amit, thanks for joining the podcast to talk with me. Just on to my last question. So, what is one message you like listeners to take away from our chat?
One message. Well, I guess if you're going to do something meaningful in life, you have to go all in. And don't let anyone tell you to not go. I guess it's more motivational than about stocks. But it relates to stocks. It's like, look, if you're going to do something meaningful in life, you have to decide that you're going to do it. And I saw a good quote yesterday, actually, by Russ. He's a rapper. You have to pick faith over fear. Like either you're going to be scared and stay on the sidelines, like a little B word, or you're going to have faith in yourself first and foremost. And you can make mistakes when you have faith, but that macro level faith when it comes to investing or anything you want to pursue in life is going to be the foundational element of you actually doing something in life before you die. And understanding that you're going to die is really important because you only got one chance literally to do something meaningful in life. So go all in is my tip.
Yeah, wow. That was it's like I don't know, poetry or something. It was good. great advice, man. So if anyone wanted to hear more about yourself, you mentioned your startups at the beginning and obviously your YouTube channel, where would they be able to find you?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is good. I'll probably link it in the description. Twitter is the best place to contact me and talk. I'm talking a lot on Twitter at Amit is investing. And yeah, that's the best place to find me.
Awesome. I'll put that all down in the chat. So Amit, thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and click the bell icon so you are notified when new podcasts are released. I hope you're leaving with some great value about investing, trading, and finance. See you on the next show.